Look out your window. The sun is shining, the birds are chirping, and the weatherman says it is finally going to hit 65 degrees today. You are probably thinking it is the perfect day to grab your rods and head to the lake. But let me tell you a harsh truth that contradicts everything your grandpa taught you about fishing. Today is going to be terrible. You are going to get out there, cast your arm off, and catch absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, the guy who went out 3 days ago in freezing temperatures, wearing 3 layers of wool, probably hauled in his personal best. Sounds crazy, right? Why does everyone rush to the water on the first warm day when the bite is actually far better in the bitter cold? Today I am going to promise you one thing. By the end of this video, you will never look at a sunny spring forecast the same way again. I am going to reveal the exact reason why your line stays completely slack when the sun comes out, and why braving the cold is your actual ticket to a massive catch. So, tell me right now before we start, have you ever rushed to the water on the first warm day and caught absolutely nothing? Let me know in the comments and let us get into the painful truth. To understand why we all make this massive mistake, we have to look at the psychology of the average fisherman. This topic is incredibly important because it dictates how we spend our limited time on the water. During the long winter months, we get cabin fever. We sit inside, we organize our tackle boxes for the 10th time, we watch fishing videos, and we pray for a break in the weather. So, the moment that first warm front pushes through, our brains tell us that nature is waking up. We associate warm air with life, activity, and hungry fish. It is a habit ingrained in us since we were kids. We see sunshine, and we think the fish are throwing a party beneath the surface. For generations, people have repeated the old saying that a warm spring breeze brings the fish to the shallows. So, year after year, millions of anglers make the exact same pilgrimage to their local ponds and lakes on the exact same sunny Saturday. They cast the exact same lures, expecting a miracle, completely ignoring the scientific reality of what is actually happening beneath the waves. The illusion of the spring sun. Let us set the scene. You pull up to the local reservoir at 7 in the morning. You do not even need your heavy coat today. The air feels incredible. But look around you. The parking lot is completely packed. Every single person who owns a fishing rod had the exact same brilliant idea as you. You walk down to the bank, find a tiny open spot between 2 other guys, and cast out. An hour goes by. 2 hours go by. Absolute silence. You reel in your lure, and you notice your fingers are surprisingly numb from touching the wet line. This is the first major lesson. The air temperature is a massive lie. You are standing in the warm air, but the fish do not breathe air. They live in a dense, liquid environment that takes a massive amount of time to heat up. Just because you took your sweater off does not mean the fish are suddenly warm and active. You are fishing for your own comfort, while the fish are still living in the dead of winter down below. The grandpa myth of hungry fish. We have all heard the old school advice. Grandpa used to say that the first warm sun brings the big fish up to the banks to feed. It sounds romantic, but it is scientifically flawed. Fish do not have weather applications on their phones. They do not know that the air above them is 60 degrees today. All they know is the water temperature surrounding their bodies. Water is incredibly dense. It takes a prolonged period of consistent heat to change the temperature of a massive body of water, even by a few degrees. That single sunny afternoon is barely warming the top half-inch of the lake. Down at a depth of 5 feet, where the fish are holding, nothing has changed. The water is still 40 degrees. They are not hungry, they are not aggressive, and they are certainly not going to chase that fast-moving spinnerbait you are ripping through the water because you feel energized by the sunshine. The biology of cold water fish. Let us talk about what a fish is actually doing when the water is cold. Fish are cold-blooded creatures. This means their body temperature is entirely regulated by their environment. When the water is freezing, their metabolism slows down to an absolute crawl. They do not need to eat every day. Sometimes they do not need to eat for a week. When you go fishing on a consistently cold day, you are dealing with fish that are locked into a stable, albeit slow, pattern. They have adjusted to the cold. If you put a slow-moving bait right in front of their nose, they will eat it simply because it is an easy meal that requires zero energy to catch. They are predictable in the cold. But when you throw a sudden, bright, warm, sunny day into the mix, it does not speed up their metabolism instantly. It actually just confuses the environment, which we will talk about next. The chaos of melting snow and runoff. Here is the dirtiest secret of the first warm day of the year. What happens when the sun blazes down on frozen ground and leftover snowbanks? They melt. And where does all that melted snow go? It runs straight down the hills, through the mud, and pours directly into your favorite fishing lake. This creates a massive problem for anglers. First, that melting snow water is freezing cold, often colder than the lake itself. It shocks the shallow areas. Second, it drags tons of mud, silt, and debris into the water. In a matter of hours, a clear, beautiful shoreline turns into a murky, muddy mess. Fish hate sudden muddy water. It clogs their gills. It destroys their visibility, and it forces them to hunker down and completely stop feeding. So while you are enjoying the sunshine on the bank, the water right in front of you has become an unlivable, muddy disaster zone. The massive pressure factor. Imagine you are sitting quietly in your living room, and suddenly 50 people run inside, start shouting and throwing rocks at your windows. That is exactly what the fish experience on the first warm day of spring. Because the weather is nice, every casual fisherman shows up. Hundreds of lures are splashing the water. Boats are firing up their engines. Kids are throwing rocks from the shore. The noise and vibration in the water reach absolute maximum levels. Fish are incredibly sensitive to water pressure and sound. When an army of anglers descends on a lake all at once, the bigger, smarter fish immediately retreat to deep water or bury themselves deep inside heavy cover. They lock their jaws shut out of pure stress. Conversely, if you go out on a miserable, overcast, freezing Tuesday, you have the lake to yourself. The water is silent, the fish are relaxed, and your chances of catching them go up dramatically. Where the fish actually hide. On a bright, sunny, early spring day, the sun penetrates the water like a laser beam. Because there are no leaves on the trees yet, and no weeds grown up from the bottom, there is zero shade. Fish do not have eyelids. Bright, piercing sunlight in clear, cold water makes them extremely uncomfortable. To escape the blinding light, they swim deeper, retreating away from the exact shorelines where everyone is standing and casting. They go down to the dark, cold depths where they feel safe. But what does the average fisherman do? He casts right along the edge of the bank, trying to catch fish in 2 feet of water. He is fishing a barren wasteland. If you had gone fishing 2 days earlier, when it was cloudy, dark, and cold, those fish would have been roaming freely, much closer to the areas you can actually reach with a normal cast. Bait fish behavior is the real key. Predator fish, like bass and walleye, only care about one thing: food. They follow the bait fish. So do the bait fish suddenly rush to the shallow water just because the sun came out for 4 hours? Absolutely not. Minnows and smaller fish are driven by deeply ingrained seasonal instincts and stable water temperatures. They stay grouped up in deep, stable water until the water temperature stays consistently warm for weeks. If the bait fish are not in the shallow water, the big predator fish are not going to be there either. It is that simple. The guy standing on the bank throwing a crankbait is trying to imitate a swimming minnow in a place where no real minnows exist yet. The predator fish know this. It looks unnatural. On a cold day, When you are fishing deep and slow, you are actually fishing where the real food chain is currently located. The reality of the cold bite. Let me describe what a successful cold bite looks like. It is 35 degrees outside. You can see your breath. There is a light frost on the guides of your fishing rod. Your fingers are stinging, but you are out in a boat or standing on a deep water point. Because it is cold, the fish are tightly grouped together in schools near the bottom. They are not scattered all over the lake like they are in the summer. This is the magic of cold water fishing. If you can locate just one fish, you have usually located 50 of them. You drop a heavy jig straight down. You barely move it. You just let it sit there. Suddenly, you feel a heavy thump. You set the hook, and you reel in a massive fish. You drop back down to the exact same spot and catch another one. The cold weather concentrates the fish. You just have to be willing to suffer a little bit to find them. Slowing down your presentation. One of the biggest reasons people fail on the first warm day is their retrieve speed. Because the angler feels warm and energized, they fish fast. They cast, crank the handle rapidly, and recast. They are fishing at a summer speed, but the fish are still operating at a winter speed. A bass sitting in 45-degree water is not going to sprint 20 yards to chase down a fast-moving spinner. It physically cannot do it without exhausting its energy reserves. When you fish in the freezing cold, you naturally fish slower. Your hands are cold, you are shivering, and you drag your bait along the bottom at a snail's pace. Without even realizing it, your misery is forcing you to use the exact presentation the fish actually want. You are matching their lethargic mood perfectly. The danger of temperature shock. We often think warming water is always a good thing, but sudden shifts are actually terrible for the bite. If a shallow bay goes from 40 degrees to 46 degrees in a single afternoon because of intense sun, that is a massive biological shock to a cold-blooded animal. It is like waking up from a deep sleep and having someone immediately throw you into a hot sauna. It makes the fish feel sick and disoriented. They do not suddenly want to eat a huge meal. They just want to stabilize their bodies. Consistent, stable cold weather is vastly superior to a sudden, wild spike in heat. Fish love stability. A steady, freezing, overcast week will yield a much more predictable and aggressive bite than a single day of chaotic, unnatural sunshine. Reading the wind incorrectly. Wind plays a massive role in early season fishing. On that beautiful warm day, there is usually a nice warm breeze pushing toward the shore. Anglers flock to that windy shoreline, thinking the warm wind is pushing warm surface water and bait into the bank. But remember what we talked about earlier? That wind is also pushing all the melting snow and muddy runoff right into your face. It destroys the water clarity. On a brutally cold day, the wind dynamics are different. Anglers who brave the cold know how to find protected deep water pockets where the water is clear and undisturbed by the howling winter wind. They find the calm, stable water where fish are resting peacefully. By avoiding the pleasant spring breeze, they are avoiding the muddy disaster that comes with it. Using the wrong gear for the situation. When the sun comes out, people break out their summer tackle boxes. Topwater lures, big noisy crankbaits, and flashy spoons. They abandon the finesse tactics that actually work in cold water. But the water is still cold. Just because the calendar says it is late March and the sun is out, does not mean the fish want a noisy summer lure. The guy who goes out in the miserable cold is already in the winter mindset. He brings tiny jigs, light line, and subtle plastic baits. He knows the fish will barely bite, so he is prepared to detect the smallest little tap on his line. He catches fish because his gear matches the reality of the water temperature. The guy in the t-shirt fails because his gear only matches the reality of the sky. The afternoon bite exception. Now, I know some of you are going to argue with me. You might say that you did catch a fish on the first warm day once. If you did, I can almost guarantee it happened at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, not at 9 in the morning. If you absolutely must fish on that first sunny day, the morning is a complete waste of your time. The water needs 8 to 10 hours of direct sunlight hitting a dark, muddy bottom just to raise the temperature by 1 single degree. By late afternoon, there might be a tiny window where the fish in shallow water feel that 1 degree of warmth and grab a passing bait. But the rest of the day, you are just practicing casting. The smart angler skips the circus, stays home, and goes out the next day when it is cold and cloudy again. A real-life example of failure. Picture this. I am standing on a rocky bank on a freezing day. The sky is dark gray. The wind is biting. I am slowly dragging a jig across a deep rock pile, and I am consistently catching solid, heavy fish. Suddenly, a guy pulls up in a truck. He sees me catching fish. 3 days later, the weather turns gorgeous. It is 65 degrees. I drive by the same lake, and I see that exact same guy standing on my rock pile. He is wearing a t-shirt, sweating, and casting a massive, loud lure as fast as he can. I watched him for an hour. He caught nothing. He looked frustrated. He probably thought the lake was fished out. But he did not understand that the environment had shifted. The sun drove the fish away from the rocks. The pressure spooked them, and his presentation was far too fast. He let the weather forecast ruin his technique. The truth about moving baits. Let us dive deeper into lure selection. Moving baits are designed to trigger a reaction strike from an aggressive hunting fish. When the water is warm in the summer, a bass will chase a moving bait down like a wolf chasing a rabbit. But in early spring, when the water is still holding winter temperatures, fish are strictly opportunists. They are scavengers, not hunters. They want a meal that falls right on their head and sits there helplessly. That is why suspending jerkbaits fished with agonizingly long pauses works so well in the dead of winter. You jerk it and let it sit perfectly still for 20 seconds. The guy fishing on the sunny day does not have the patience to let a bait sit for 20 seconds. He is feeling good, he wants action, and he moves the bait away from the fish before they even decide to look at it. Understanding water turnover and density. Here is a little science lesson that explains everything. Cold water is heavier and denser than warm water. During the winter, the coldest water is at the surface, and slightly warmer water sits at the very bottom. As the spring sun hits the top layer, that surface water warms up slightly. As it reaches 39 degrees, it becomes heavy and sinks. This causes the entire lake to mix and churn. We call this turnover. It pulls dead vegetation, muck, and zero oxygen water from the bottom and mixes it everywhere. During this mixing process, the fish feel absolutely miserable. Their oxygen levels fluctuate, and the water gets cloudy from the inside out. This turnover process is triggered by those early warm days. So while you think the warm sun is helping, it is actually turning the entire lake upside down and ruining the fish's environment. The psychological trap of the angler. We need to have an honest conversation about ego and comfort. Fishing is supposed to be fun. Sitting in freezing wind with numb toes is not most people's idea of fun. So, we naturally gravitate toward days that feel pleasant to us. We convince ourselves that if we feel good, the fish must feel good too. It is a psychological trap. We lie to ourselves. We say things like, the sun will warm up the shallows, just to justify getting out of the house. But the best fishermen in the world do not fish based on their own comfort. They fish based on the biological reality of the animal they are trying to catch. They embrace the suck. They know that putting on heavy waterproof gear and braving a miserable, cold, gray day is the price of admission for catching giant fish that have not been harassed by the general public. Overcoming the urge to follow the crowd. So how do you break this terrible habit? It starts by looking at the weather forecast completely differently. When you see a week of cold weather followed by one single beautiful warm Saturday, You need to resist the urge to go out on Saturday. Instead, you should try to go out on Thursday or Friday, right before the weather changes. The barometric pressure is usually dropping. The sky is cloudy, and the fish are feeding aggressively in stable, cold water before the bright sun comes out and ruins everything. You have to train yourself to ignore the sunshine. Let the weekend warriors have the lake on Saturday. Let them cast over each other's lines, tangle their gear, and complain about the lack of fish. You will already have photos of your massive catch from the cold days prior. The pure reward of the cold. There is something incredibly special about fishing when nobody else wants to. When you go out in the freezing cold, you get the ultimate reward: solitude. There are no jet skis doing donuts in the middle of the lake. There are no loud radios blasting from pontoon boats. There are no angry people crowding the boat ramp. It is just you, the silent water, and nature. In that silence, you can actually focus. You can feel every single rock your bait bumps into. You can notice the subtle movements of the water. This level of concentration is impossible on a crowded, chaotic spring day. The cold weather strips away all the distractions. It forces you to become a better, more deliberate angler. The fish you catch in these harsh conditions feel earned. They are a testament to your skill, not just blind luck on a sunny afternoon. The ultimate mindset shift. The next time that false spring arrives, I want you to remember everything we just talked about. Remember that the water is still freezing. Remember that the mud is washing in. Remember the chaos of the crowds. Change your mindset from a casual sunny day fisher to a strategic hunter. A hunter goes where the prey is comfortable, not where the hunter wants to get a tan. Pack your heaviest winter jacket, tie on your smallest, slowest jigs, and seek out the deep, stable, cold water. If you can make this mental shift, you will stop wasting your time casting into barren, muddy water. You will start targeting concentrated schools of massive fish that are willing to eat a perfectly presented, slow-moving bait. Break the grandpa myth, ignore the air temperature, and start fishing the actual water. Let us bring this all together. The biggest trap in fishing is letting the weather app dictate your logic. We have learned that the first warm day is nothing but a false promise. It brings massive crowds, muddy runoff, intense pressure, and bright sunlight that forces fish deep into cover. The real turning point in your fishing journey happens when you realize that cold, stable water is far better than a sudden, chaotic, warm spike. You have to stop fishing for your own comfort and start fishing for the fish's reality. By braving the freezing temperatures, slowing down your presentation, and avoiding the sunny day circus, you are putting yourself in the top 1% of anglers who actually understand what is happening beneath the surface. It is a harsh truth, but it will put more fish in your net than a lifetime of sunny Saturdays ever could. Thank you so much for watching and hanging out with me today. If this video changed the way you look at spring fishing, please hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, and share this with a buddy who always drags you out on the worst possible days. Now, I want to hear from you. What was your absolute worst experience fishing on the first warm day of the year? Did you lose lures, fight the crowds, or just freeze your hands off catching nothing? Drop your story in the comments below and let us talk about it. Until next time, stay warm, fish slow, and I will see you on the water.